Hi, Stuart.
Hi, Bennett.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you, sir.
Good. Does everybody know Stuart? Yeah? For those who don't, maybe you can share a little bit of background about yourself.
Okay, so I am the founder and CEO of I Am Global. I Am Global is a Hollywood-based but truly international-facing film and television production, financing, licensing, and distribution company. So we are a very active film financier and producer in Hollywood. We are one of the leading international film sales companies in Hollywood. We have a thriving scripted TV business and have a substantial deficit financing capability in television. We also have offices in Beijing, Shanghai, London, Mexico City, Munich, and we, in addition to handling international rights to a substantial library of about 300 films, we also are one of the main licensing platforms for non-English language content, including a number of major Chinese films.
What are some of the English language films that you've made that you're pretty proud of?
Well, we're a partner on Mel Gibson's film, Hacksaw Ridge, which opens this weekend in the US, and that we hope will be a substantial hit, both here and internationally. We are a partner on Martin Scorsese's film Silence, which opens at the end of this year, and obviously is a relatively big budget prestige film. So, I mean, they're the two right now that are keeping me awake at night.
And how do you, because you mentioned that you're one of the top foreign sales companies in the business, how do you find domestic distribution here in the U.S. for it?
We do it on a picture-by-picture basis, depending on which studio or which distributor has the most appetite for a film, the best releasing plan for the film, offering the best economic terms, all of the usual considerations. And these days it is a tricky path to navigate more than ever, because releasing movies in the U.S. is a difficult business.
What's the hardest part about it?
I think the hardest part is for the distributors themselves, and we're not a distributor. We basically sell to distributors, is reaching the audience, which is increasingly fragmented, distracted, overly informed sometimes. And so, whereas once there used to be a degree of reliability based on the size of a marketing campaign and the size of the media spend, I think increasingly that relationship has become a really unpredictable one, and we see big movies with studio-level P&A spends open to single-digit box office, and conversely, sometimes we see movies that people didn't think would work manage to connect with an audience and open up a much bigger numbers, and it's become more of a crapshoot.
So do you think that, I guess, the traditional model of more broadcast, television advertising spend is going away, and it's more figuring out the reach on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what has to happen for certainly the American theatrical releasing business to cure itself and to become an efficient business model again. So everybody knows, studios, audiences, producer financiers such as ourselves, the audience basically lives online these days, and that is the way to reach a targeted demographic most efficiently. But, for a whole host of reasons, media budgets on wide release films still contain probably disproportionate amounts of expenditure on television advertising, outdoor advertising, which is less efficient, but it's a brave marketing head who decides to dispense with it on a movie that costs $200 million. So slowly, the ship is turning to face in the right direction. We've seen some instances, I think, in the past 12 months of films where a studio, for whatever reason, was able to sort of take the leap and concentrate their marketing spend much more heavily on digital, with strong results. If you look at a couple of movies Sony released at the end of the summer, Sausage Party and Don't Breathe, both of which over-delivered at the box office despite having what are, by studio standards, very modest spends.
It's probably a good segue to China, because I love China so much, and the film business and TV business there. So I don't have the actual numbers, so don't quote me on this, please, but I think probably like a P&A equivalent spend is probably about 10% of what it is here. So for the movies that you're producing here, that you're selling here, you're looking for domestic partners. How do you approach those films in China, or do you not?
Well, no, obviously in an ideal world, whatever film that we're making also gets a substantial release in China, and we reap some of the economic rewards that come with that. Obviously, it's a unique marketplace, and there are a unique set of hoops to jump through before you can achieve that, principally to do with the quota system, if it's an American film, and then censorship, and then even assuming that you have a film that's theoretically able to navigate the censorship and the quota aspects. Commercially speaking, you still need to find a distributor that has the appetite for the film, thinks it can work, and is willing to either pay in advance or at least spend P&A. So it's a difficult process to navigate. Obviously, everybody's trying to crack the code, but there is no formula right now. It's really about trying to make films that have that capability in the first place, and then navigate the landscape as skillfully as possible on a year-round basis, which is why we opened an office in Beijing a number of years ago, was so that we could have that day-to-day dialogue with the distribution community instead of doing what is more often the case, which is trying to pick off these deals at film markets, which is often not very fruitful.
I thought that you had the formula, because I thought you gave it to me. I've actually been following your formula.
That was my secret gift to you, Bennett. I can't say it here.
So talk about the business that you have in Beijing and how I Am Global approaches China.
Right. So we, about 4 years ago, having earlier in my career done a substantial amount of business in Asia and in Hong Kong and China, where I was an executive at Miramax Films when that was probably the US studio that was most active in acquiring Chinese language content. So I had an affinity for that part of the world, and like everybody else, could see that it was going to become hugely important to our business. We took an approach which I think was a little different to many others, which is instead of immediately rushing there to see what we could grab in the way of financing or distribution, we took the approach, let's make ourselves relevant. Let's make ourselves part of the community in China, and then hopefully other good things will follow from that. So we opened a local office, and obviously part of the function of that local office was to help source distribution for our films in China, but we also decided to use our international sales capability and infrastructure to offer an export service, if you like, for bigger Chinese language films, which were, and in many cases still continue to be, very poorly handled and poorly served in the international marketplace.
So how is that going, actually?
Well, I think it's going well. I hope it's going well. We certainly found that the film community in Beijing was very receptive to that, because there was an acknowledgement that international film sales was not an area of the business where there was a strong history or skill set within the Chinese sector. So a company like ours, a Hollywood company with a big global infrastructure and market presence, offering that was immediately attractive to companies who didn't have the capability themselves, but perhaps had the ambition, either on a corporate level or in relation to a specific picture, to get it out there and A, monetize the film as aggressively as possible, and B, also promote their brand and Chinese cinema's brand. So we, in the 3 or 4 years that we've been doing it, we've handled a number of major commercial successes, films like The Mermaid, Breakup Buddies, Mr. Six, Legend of Mo Jian, and I've had the pleasure of working with most of the major local players, Huayi, Wanda, Enlight, China Film Group. So that's been a terrific conduit for us to be real partners with the Chinese sector, as opposed to showing up with our hands out.
I'm glad you're working with pretty much all of our client base.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty good. So how many Chinese films would you be handling at AFM in a couple of days?
I think we introduced one new film a film called The Adventurers, which is one of the first productions from Flagship, the CMC and Warner Brothers joint venture, which is a fairly big budget undertaking, and I know they have big aspirations for that movie. And then we have several other films on the slate that we've been handling because these films, you don't necessarily sell them at one market. It takes time. It takes cultivation of the marketplace, maybe 2, 3, 4 markets. So we have about 5 or 6 films on the slate, and we've handled about 35 films in the last 5 or 6 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's quite a bit.
Yeah, we have an output deal with YE, so that's been a steady pipeline. And again, I think even now, despite the huge amounts of activity between the US industry and the Chinese industry, we're still really the only major Hollywood sales company that's made a true commitment to this pipeline of films and has devoted real infrastructure to it. And so we're seeing a good share of the bigger movies.
Would you say that there's a greater demand for these titles in more of Southeast Asia, or do you see it equal demand out of Europe?
Certainly Southeast Asia is the strongest region for the films because these movies, they have a profile and the talent have a profile, and a hit movie in China can very often do substantial box office in Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, etc. So we usually sell very aggressively in those markets. But I think what we've done very successfully is also create more of an appetite, more of an awareness, and more of a commercial value for these films outside of Asia, in North America, Western Europe, Australia. Again, there is theatrical business to be done on the biggest movies in America, in the UK, in Australia, and we look to maximize that theatrical potential. But what we've also done, I think successfully, is build a broader commercial appetite for these films amongst the broadcast and the digital community globally, which is really where the future of most of these films, distribution and financially speaking, lies.
Yeah, I know you're handling, I'm not going to mention the title, but there's a title that we financed for Enlight that I know is in your sales catalog. Chanel Chen asked me to ask you about it, but I'll ask you offline so we don't, unless you want to know. No? Okay, no, I'm not going to tell you. Anyway, have you thought about producing any titles for the local market in China?
We've thought about it, and
great thought, like deep.
Deep. I never think of anything too deeply, but we can talk about this in a second. But we have Chinese partners in the company, several of whom are within the local business. So it's highly possible that we'll do that. We'll take that leap. We certainly are working hard. We have a thriving business setting up remakes of international films in China, which is a really interesting area of the business. So, yeah, I can see us being in that arena sooner rather than later.
Okay. I know that a couple studios tried some remakes of some pretty popular comedy titles here. And, comedies had a tough time, translating back into China, and especially because probably what the scripts were probably written by Chinese. And since comedy is so localized, for the properties that you have you're looking to remake, are they more action-oriented? Are they comedy or more drama? How would you view them?
I think primarily they're a mixture of comedies, dramas, romances, some combination of the three. We're lucky because we're a company that does business in 120 different territories around the world every day. We have relationships in every single one of those markets, and we actually have an infrastructure that allows us to look at material not just from the US, but from Latin America, from Europe, from Eastern Europe. So that's a great search engine to look for material. And then the way our process works, because we have local executives in Beijing, we can very quickly either send them a link to a film or send them a synopsis, or sometimes just send them a piece of artwork and sort of say, yes or no. Do you think this could work, not work? And we try and be scientific about it.
Yeah. So I know that your company's been in the news a lot lately for a couple things. One, you have new capital partners. What's the strategy behind that, where you're going to take the company with the new capital that's been raised?
Well, there's a couple of aspects to it. Obviously, money is money, and so with any new capital partner, we have a global strategy for the company, and then that capital substantially comes from China, and so inevitably there's a China component to that global strategy. to deal with the former, I think our global strategy is recognizing the fairly rapid convergence right now between high-end, independently financed film content and high-end television content. In the same way as the creative forces making that kind of content are converging, as are the distribution universes, and therefore for a company like ours, which is both a content creator and a content licensor, we've effectively converged that as well. So we have used a portion of that initial capital to very significantly expand our television production business. And as part of the investment from my partners at TMP, we set up a new television joint venture with TMP and Tencent, which is a name that needs no introduction in this room. And as part of that television joint venture with Tencent and TMP, we established a dedicated television financing fund, which I believe is relatively unique in the industry. There are lots of film financing funds, but a TV-specific one is an unusual thing. And we've already committed to a number of fairly high-profile, big-budget shows, and over the next couple of years, our high-end television scripted output will be the match in terms of budgets and profile and hopefully revenues as our feature business. So that's a very important line in our strategy. We also will be moving into unscripted television in a fairly substantial way over the next couple of months. And our hope is not just to be a prolific and high-profile player in the U.S. Unscripted arena, but also within China, and to produce content locally for that marketplace.
Yeah, because I didn't prepare any questions for you, so I'm just making this stuff up as we go.
You're doing a great job. I love it.
Hold on, Jonathan. And you actually just stole my next question, because I was just thinking one ahead, which was kind of TV. So my shameless question is...
Shameless?
Shameless, not the TV show.
Can I give you a shameless answer?
Of course you can.
Okay,
of course
be
you
careful.
Can. So how are you going to finance all of these in the bank market in your company?
I can't imagine. Which bank could we use? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. Ideally one with a unique foothold in both the Chinese and international marketplace. So if you happen to know that bank, let me know, please.
I'll think about it. I'll give some thought to it.
We're open for business.
On that side. Do we have any questions out in the audience? Yes, who's the person who's taping this?
Yes. Hi. Is there a mic? Mic is coming. Okay. Hi. Yeah.
And it's going to be a question. It's not going to be
it is a question.
pitching a show or something.
No. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you. Well, of course, I started AET, which is the premier global streaming platform, and we're trying to expand into Asia because we have a motherland section, and I wanted to know, how does Asian American content creators reach that market? Because not just China, but all of Southeast Asia, South Asia, you know what I mean? All those different audiences. How does somebody do that?
I didn't actually catch what you said. You say you're an online platform?
Yes, we're like the Asian American television streaming platform. We're sort of like Asian American at Netflix plus Spotify plus Twitch.
Right.
We're also doing like mobile games and music.
He wants to know how to reach that product into China.
Not just China, but all of Asia. You know what I mean?
Well, if your content's available online within Asia, then I guess you just have to market it and make stuff that's going to work for that audience. If you don't have carriage, then it sounds as if your first task is to find, online or broadcast partners who'll carry the platform.
Right, but just Asia is not one size fits all as far as content.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what to do. Next week in Macau is the Cable and Satellite Broadcasting of Asia conference. So if you're there, I'll be speaking there actually. So if you're there next week, you can probably talk about how to get reach. Is there any, you, right there.
I'm Lily, and I used to work in commercial banking and now transferring to entertainment industry. My question to both of you is, how would you identify successful projects, and what are the major risk factors you look into those projects from the film projects from financial perspectives?
Like
Well,
to go?
you go ahead.
You go first.
No, you've asked all the
Okay.
questions so far. You
All
should
right.
answer this one.
I don't know if it's going to be a good answer for you, but I believe pretty strongly in relationships. I mean, obviously, if someone's going to invest in your project, you know, they want the script, you know, to be of high quality. I don't know what's high quality or poor quality, but I know that building trust is important. Spending the time to make relationships, and I think when you do that, I think good things always happen.
I think my answer is, to the extent there is one answer, we're looking for several qualities. We're looking for the caliber of the filmmaking people involved, the producers, the directors, the writers, the actors. We're looking for story material that we think can work commercially on a global level. We're looking for financial and distribution partners on the film that can help maximize the performance of the film in the marketplace.